The helicopter's searchlight swept across the black sands like the eye of an angry god. I dragged the woman into the shadow of a sea cave, my mind spinning. The billionaire secrets I thought I understood were shifting beneath me like quicksand. Dae-hyun had mentioned a blood covenant, a promise made 20 years ago, but he never mentioned a third party. He never mentioned another heir. "Who are you?" I demanded, pressing the barrel of the gun to the woman's damp forehead. "I was his assistant, in the Secret Soul office," she choked out. "My name is Ji-won." Dae-hyun knew his father would try to erase the Lagos-Busan records. But those records contain more than shipping manifests. They contain the birth certificates. Above us, the helicopter hovered, the downwash kicking up a storm of sand and spray. I could see the silhouettes of tactical teams rappelling down ropes. The chairman wasn't playing games anymore. This was a revenge and power struggle that had moved beyond corporate takeovers. This was biological warfare. "Why is the chairman looking for a child?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because the debt isn't just about land or oil," Ji-won whispered, clutching her side. "The blood covenant was a merger of two empires through a single bloodline. Your father and the chairman didn't just trade secrets, they attempted to create a bridge. If there is a child with both your blood and the Lee blood, that child owns everything. The ports, the ships, the legacy. The chairman wants to kill the bridge so he can keep the empire for himself." The logic was chilling. It made our forbidden love, the brief, electric connection I felt with Dae-hyun, feel like a scripted tragedy. Were we just the architects of a new weapon? "I don't have a child with Dae-hyun," I hissed. "Not you," Ji-won said, her eyes fluttering. "The one from 20 years ago. The secret daughter of your father's first wife and the chairman's brother. She's the one who holds the encryption keys in her DNA. She is the debt." Gunfire erupted from the top of the cliff. Minute was engaging the tactical teams, buying us seconds. I looked at the woman in my arms. She was dying, another casualty in this dark romance betrayal. She shoved the bloodstained folder into my hands. "Find the orphanage in Myeong-dong," she gasped. "The girl, her name is Sora. She has the mark." Before I could ask what the mark was, a flashbang detonated at the mouth of the cave. The world turned white. High-pitched ringing drowned out the sound of the ocean. I felt rough hands grab my shoulders, dragging me away from Ji-won. I fought, kicking and screaming, but the butt of a rifle connected with my temple, and the darkness claimed me again. When I woke, I wasn't in a basement or a cave. I was in a room of pew glass and gold. I was in the heart of the Lee Empire, the chairman's private office in the Lotte World Tower, overlooking the sprawling lights of Seoul. Sitting across from me, sipping tea with a chilling composure, was a man who looked exactly like a weathered, cruel version of Dae-hyun. "Chairman Lee, you have your mother's eyes, Maya," he said, his voice like dry parchment. "It's a pity they have to see the end of your line. Where is the girl?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I spat, tasting blood in my mouth. The chairman smiled, a slow, predatory expression. He gestured to a monitor on the wall. My heart stopped. It was a live feed of the Jeju safe house. Kofi was tied to a chair, a red laser dot dancing across his forehead. "Let's try again," the chairman said. "Where is the debt?" "You're burning your own house down to find a ghost," I said, my voice steady despite the terror vibrating in my chest. I stared at the chairman, the architect of the underground crime syndicate that had haunted my family across 2 continents. "If you kill Kofi, you lose your only leverage. You'll never find the girl." The chairman leaned back, the city lights of Seoul shimmering behind him like a sea of diamonds. "Leverage is a renewable resource, Maya. But time is not. My brother's mistake, that girl, is a loose thread that threatens the stability of our global smuggling network. If the board of directors finds out there is a legitimate heir with your father's claim, my authority vanishes. I am not looking for a niece. I am looking for a liability to liquidate." He stood up and walked toward me, his expensive leather shoes clicking on the marble floor. You will go to Myeong-dong. You will retrieve the girl. My men will be watching every breath you take. If you try to run, your brother's head will decorate the Jeju coastline. I was escorted out of the tower and into a black sedan. They gave me 2 hours. 2 hours to find a girl I didn't know and deliver her to a monster. But as the car wove through the neon-drenched streets of Myeong-dong, I felt a vibration in the lining of my jacket. I reached into a hidden pocket. It was a burner phone. I hadn't put it there. A text message appeared on the screen. Crowded alley behind the cathedral. 3 minutes. Don't look back. The handwriting, or rather, the digital tone, felt familiar. It was the same clinical, protective aura that Dae-hyun had used to keep me alive in Incheon. My heart leaped. He was alive. The dark romance betrayal I feared had been a ruse to get him under the radar. I waited for the car to slow in the dense tourist traffic of the shopping district. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself out of the moving car, tumbling onto the pavement. The chairman's guards shouted, but the Myeong-dong crowds were a chaotic ocean. I sprinted into a narrow alleyway, the smell of street food and rain-slick pavement filling my lungs. I turned the corner behind the Gothic spires of the cathedral. A shadow moved in the doorway of a closed tea shop. A hand reached out, pulling me into the darkness. I went to scream, but a familiar scent, expensive sandalwood and cold steel, stopped me. Dae-hyun, I breathed. He looked different. His hair was shorn short, a jagged scar ran through his eyebrow, and his eyes were harder than I remembered. He didn't hug me. He checked the alleyway for tails, his movements sharp and efficient. "We don't have time for a reunion," he said, his voice a low growl. "My father is tracking your biological signature through the ring he gave you. He let you go because you're a bloodhound, Maya. You're leading him straight to Sora." "You knew about her?" I asked, heart stinging more than the bruises on my temple. "The real A? Is that why you targeted me? To find her?" Dae-hyun gripped my shoulders, his fingers digging into my coat. "I targeted you to save her. And you. The chairman thinks Sora is a liability, but she's the key to the family legacy war. She doesn't just have the encryption keys. She is the encryption key. Her existence proves the chairman murdered his own brother to take the throne." He pulled a small device from his pocket and jammed it into the base of my ring, neutralizing the tracker. "We have 20 minutes before they realize the signal is dead," he said. "The orphanage is a front for a Lee-controlled security firm. We aren't going there to retrieve her. We're going there to start a revolution." He handed me a vest and a fresh magazine. "The Korean mafia empire is built on a lie, Maya. Tonight, we tell the truth." The Orphanage of Eternal Grace was a brutalist concrete slab hidden behind the vibrant cosmetic shops of Myeong-dong. It looked like a prison because it was one. This was where the Lee family stashed their inconveniences, the illegitimate children, the witnesses, and the living ghosts of their underground crime syndicate. Dae-hyun and I moved through the service tunnels like shadows. He was a man possessed, a fallen prince returning to burn his father's kingdom. I followed him, not because I trusted him fully, but because the revenge and power struggle had become my only path back to Kofi. "Sora is in the sub-basement," Dae-hyun whispered as we neutralized a silent alarm. "They keep her under heavy sedation. Her blood is drawn every month to verify the encryptions for the Lagos accounts. My father uses her like a living bank vault." The depravity of the Lee legacy made my stomach churn. "How could you be part of this for so long?" Dae-hyun paused, the red light of the security corridor painting his face in shades of crimson. "I wasn't part of it. I was waiting. I spent 10 years building my own network inside the empire just to find where he hid her. You were the final piece, Maya. Your father left a biometric lock on the Lagos end of the route. It requires a direct descendant's touch to unlock the full truth. That's why I needed you." "You used me," I said, the words heavy with dark romance betrayal. "I chose you," he countered, his eyes burning into mine. "Because I knew you were the only one strong enough to survive what comes next." We burst into the sub-basement. The room was a high-tech medical bay. In the center, a girl no older than 10 sat in a chair, her arm connected to a complex filtering machine. She looked up, her eyes wide and hauntingly similar to my own. "Sora, who are you?" she asked, her voice a tiny silver thread. "Family," I said, stepping forward. But the doors behind us hissed open. A dozen men in tactical gear stepped in, led by the chairman's right hand, Minute-ho. I gasped. Minute-ho, the man I thought was loyal to Dae-hyun, held a detonator in his hand. "I'm sorry, sir," Minute-ho said, looking at Dae-hyun with genuine regret. "But your father pays for my family's safety. You only pay with dreams of a better world." Dae-hyun didn't flinch. He stepped in front of me and Sora, shielding us with his body. "The dreams are over, Minute-ho. Look at the monitors." On the medical screens, the data wasn't showing Sora's vitals anymore. It was streaming a live broadcast to every major news outlet in Korea and Nigeria. The birth certificates, the murder evidence, the global smuggling network routes. Everything was being dumped into the public domain in real time. "The encryption wasn't just a lock," Dae-hyun said, a cold smile touching his lips. "It was a dead man's switch. The moment I entered this room with Maya, the debt was settled. The world knows everything." The chairman's voice crackled over the room's intercom, distorted and shaking with rage. "Kill them. Kill them all and burn the building." Minute-ho hesitated. The tactical team looked at each other. They were professional killers, but they were also businessmen. And the business they served had just evaporated. "The empire is gone, Minute-ho," I said, stepping toward him. "You can die for a ghost, or you can walk away." Minute-ho lowered his weapon, but a sudden explosion rocked the floor above us. The chairman wasn't waiting for his men. He was collapsing the building. "Go!" Dae-hyun shouted, grabbing Sora and shoving her toward me. "The laundry chute leads to the subway tunnels. Take her and run." "Not without you." I screamed as the ceiling began to crack. "I have to find my father," Dae-hyun said, his eyes filled with a terrifying, final clarity. "He has to see the face of the man who ended him." A massive concrete beam crashed between us, sealing the exit. I saw Dae-hyun one last time through the dust, a lone warrior in the heart of the collapsing Korean mafia empire, before the darkness forced me to turn and run with the girl who held our future in her veins. 6 months later, the Lagos sun was a golden hammer, beating down on the bustling shipping docks that once belonged to my father. Now, they belonged to a new entity, the Midnight Foundation. I stood on the balcony of the refurbished headquarters, watching the massive container ships slide into the harbor. These ships didn't carry contraband or secrets. They carried medical supplies, tech, and the hopes of a generation. We had dismantled the global smuggling network and rebuilt it into a lifeline. Kofi stood beside me, looking healthier than I'd ever seen him. He managed the logistics now, a man who had reclaimed his life from the shadows of the underground crime syndicate. "The audit is complete, Maya," he said, handing me a tablet. "Every cent of the Lee family's frozen assets has been diverted into the reparations fund. The debt is officially zero." I nodded, my eyes drifting to the courtyard below. A young girl was playing in the garden, her laughter echoing against the stone walls. Sora. She was no longer a biometric key or a mafia liability. She was just a child, the ward of a new kind of empire. But the victory felt incomplete. The chairman had been found in the ruins of the Myeong-dong orphanage, crushed by the weight of his own hubris. But Dae-hyun was never found. No body, no DNA, no trace. To the world, he was a casualty of the collapse. To me, he was a ghost that I saw in every shadow and felt in every heartbeat. I looked down at the ring on my finger. I had added a small black diamond to the setting, a tribute to the man who burned the world so I could see the light. "You have a visitor," Kofi said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He wouldn't give a name. He just said he was here to collect interest. My heart skipped a beat. I walked down to the private reception room, my breath catching in my throat. Standing by the window, silhouetted against the Lagos skyline, was a man in a tailored black suit. He looked older, his face more scarred, his presence even more commanding. He turned, and for a moment, the world stopped. It wasn't Dae-hyun. It was Minute-ho. "I brought something for you, Ms. Lee," Minute-ho said, bowing deeply. He placed a small, weathered wooden box on the table. "He wanted you to have this when the work was done." I opened the box. Inside was a single, charred playing card, the ace of spades, and a set of coordinates for a small, private island in the Mediterranean. On the back of the card, in that familiar, sharp hangul, were 3 words, "Our reign begins." A cold, exhilarating realization washed over me. Dae-hyun hadn't just survived. He had spent the last 6 months cleaning up the remnants of the family legacy war from the shadows. He had allowed the world to believe he was dead so he could operate without a target on his back. He wasn't the ghost of Jeju anymore. He was the architect of something much larger. I looked at Minute-ho. "Tell him I'm not interested in a reign. I'm interested in a partner." Minute-ho smiled, the first time I had ever seen him do so. "He knows. That's why the plane is already waiting at the hangar." I looked out at the docks, at my brother, at Sora, and at the empire I had built from the ashes of betrayal. The forbidden love that had started in a rainy Seoul alleyway hadn't been a tragedy after all. It had been an origin story. I gripped the coordinates in my hand, a predatory smile crossing my face. The debt was paid, but the game was just getting interesting. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the Midnight Empress, and I was going to find my king. "Kofi," I called out, my voice ringing with a new, dark authority. "Get the car. We're going to the airport. It's time to settle one last account." The story of the Korean mafia empire was over. The legend of the Midnight Empire had just begun.